Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to a very special weekend edition of the Erin Molan Show. Thank you for spending some time with us here. We really appreciate it. Whether it's on YouTube, on the podcast, whether you consume tidbits on social media, we don't care as long as you're enjoying it and you find value in it. Make sure you share, make sure you rate or rank or review, whatever the hell it is they ask you to do, even if you just watch us here on YouTube. And we are so grateful for you. Go follow the podcast. Even if you will never visit the podcast again, it would be a lovely thing to do. It is paying off. We are growing so much, and it's all because of you guys. So thank you so, so much. I'm rewarding you today, by the way. This is my gift to you with a very special guest. His name is Alan Mendoza. Defected from the Conservative Party in the UK to Reform UK, Nigel Farage's party, in a foreign policy advisory role. He could be the next Foreign Secretary of the UK. Look at Nigel Farage's polls. I mean, he is flying yards ahead. So I wanted to get to know this man. I also wanted to ask him about Nigel Farage and some of the things that have been said in recent times that are not particularly flattering. I want to know what direction this party, should they take power in the UK, which direction they'll head in when it comes to, say, Russia-Ukraine. I mean, who knows what that will look like by the time the next UK election comes around, but I want to know where he stands. Same as the Middle East, same as the UK. I want to know domestically what they care about. So it's a very interesting discussion, very enlightening discussion. And this is a man, Alan, that you need to get to know. He knows his stuff. He really does. But it's going to be interesting to watch this union. And how aligned are they really? And I'm talking about Alan and Nigel Farage. Well, allow me to help you find out. Enjoy. Alan, first of all, thank you so very much for coming on the Erin Molan Show. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Well, it's an honour to be on the Erin Molan Show with Erin Molan herself.
I mean, you would not read about it. I'm the host as well. Who would have thought?
It's all in one. That's what we like, though. Sensible packaging, and it's going to work.
Thank you. Your faith is amazing. I want to ask you the same question about your latest move. Is it going to work? Will we see you potentially as the next Foreign Minister of the UK?
Well, that is a decision well above my pay grade. But why have I done it? I think I've done it because, firstly, the Conservative Party somewhat lost its way in the UK, as I'm sure you've seen. And, despite being 30 years in the party, I felt the party did not anymore reflect where the British people need us to be at this particular moment of abject crisis in the UK. We can see what's happening on a sociological level. We can see what's happening in economics. We can see what's happening to the country's standing. It needs radical solutions. And actually, the only person who can deliver that right now is Nigel Farage. He is the leader I think the country is waiting for right now, to grab the situation by the scruff of its neck and to bring in radical reforms that are going to, return us to being Great Britain. So from my perspective, it was, a significant pull factor to want to be part of this team who are developing these new ideas that are going to reshape the country. And that, to me, is an exciting moment because it's where the country needs to be. And I'm delighted to be part of that.
I'll get onto that because I think that's a really exciting move, and I think you'll do a phenomenal job there. But I want to ask you first, did you fight for the Conservatives first? How much time did you spend trying to convince them that they were potentially losing their way in this space? Or did you ascertain pretty early on that there's actually no steering this ship in the short term? The best way I can contribute is by jumping ship.
Well, I think there comes a point when everyone who's involved in public service of some way or another takes a look at where they can sensibly contribute. Look, I've spent 30 years in the Conservative Party. By the way, the Conservative Party's still got great people in it, great friends, people I respect immensely, and I've got a lot of time for Kemi Badenoch, the leader, for that matter. But, you look at what you can personally contribute and where your, sort of ideas are heading, where the philosophy of others are, and you need to make that match, don't you? You need to look at that and go, I think that actually, where I am philosophically is where the Reform Party is these days. And as a result, you look at that and go, despite the ties that bind of 30 years, as it were, you've got to make a move that perhaps is in the best interest of the nation. And so from that perspective, I'd done my work in the trenches. when I joined the Conservative Party, Erin, they were in the absolute trough. It was the mid-1990s, late 90s. They just got a massive kicking from the electorate. And I did my hard work at that point. I stayed, I did what I could. But I just felt that this time round, there wasn't going to be a transformation that was going to lead to the party being able to meet the needs of the British people. So, I've gone based on my own philosophy and where I think reform is as well. The two have become, a very good match in my view, and that's why I've gone.
Some people say, I didn't leave a party, this party that I joined left me. Would you describe it in similar terms?
It's a great saying, but I wouldn't be so stark, because the Conservative Party has always been a bit of a melange of views. And I suppose, you've interviewed a few different, people from that side of the world. So the point is that, look, it's been a melange of views. I suppose the Prime Minister who's always appealed to me the most was the Prime Minister in my formative years, Margaret Thatcher. So, I have always aspired to her way of thinking in terms of the political philosophy that I've sort of embodied. And there hasn't really been anyone since Margaret Thatcher, in my view, to sort of support. And you can go along, part of the way. And look, you can't ever agree with a party 100% of the time. That's impossible. There's going to be things that you don't like, but you've got to agree with a party, 80% of the time to work out if they're yours. And if you look at the style of leadership as well as the ideas, that radical zeal, it's Nigel Farage who embodies that spirit of, Maggie today, basically. That, the sort of sense of Britain can be better than what it is today, that there's a national spirit that can be revived, that there's openness, that there's positivity, that our tomorrows are going to be better than our todays. If you look at that, that's what she was all about. She turned the country around. I think he can too.
You've joined at a time where, there's always a controversy. It's politics, it's the UK, et cetera, but where he's being accused of having said things that were awful, that were racist. Who is Nigel Farage in your view, and how do you respond to things that I imagine, given who you are, you would consider highly offensive if they were true?
Well, let's look at it this way. I've spent a lot of time with Nigel Farage, and let's just nail it straight on the head. The man is not an anti-Semite. There is, in fact, not an anti-Semitic bone in his body. I have seen him get angry at the idea that Jews might have to leave the UK because of anti-Semitism. He finds this abhorrent.
He did on this very show. Exactly.
Well, there we are then, exactly.
Visibly aggravated at the thought.
So, an anti-Semite wouldn't feel like that. An anti-Semite would be delighted for Jews to be leaving the country. But I think Nigel Farage is a consummate British patriot. And his vision of Britain includes all those within Britain who want to make Britain great again and who adhere to those traditional British values. And he very much counts the Jewish community as being an intrinsic part of that. So I've got no idea what happened 50 years ago. He's made it quite clear that he didn't say those things. He did admit to some banter here and there, which might have been offensive. He accepts that point. 13, 14-year-old boys probably do that. But I'm struck by the fact there hasn't been a single complaint about him since his school days, whatever those complaints are. And he's had a long time in politics and in economic life to accrued those complaints, and nobody can say a thing. On the contrary, the people today say about him is that he is pro the Jewish community and that he is a person most likely of our political leaders to ensure that British Jews can enjoy 3.5 centuries more successful life in Britain, just as they've already had 350 successful years to date.
Is your country on the brink of just collapse? It goes through phases, yes, but I feel like there's this tinderbox almost. There is so much unrest, the crime, the hate. It just seems to have reached a new low.
A lot of things are going wrong. And I think, ordinary Britons are fed up to their back teeth of, firstly, economic malaise. There's been no productivity gains for years. Standards of living have not risen. There's a sense they're being left behind by the world, basically. And, Erin, this is the country that, created much of the modern world that we know. So for us to feel that we're now just bystanders, I think that touches a big chord. Secondly, if you look at what's happening to the police, to justice, to the institutions, there's a sense of corrosion. You always used to think that the British police were fair. You always thought British justice was fair. You always thought the BBC was fair. Well, all that's gone now. Look around. You can see the corrosion that's been caused by ideology, by wokeness, by the sense that, there is actually a two-tier system going on. That is, again, a visceral dagger at the heart of the British nation. And people feel it. They feel it's wrong, fundamentally wrong. And they look at demographic change. If you look at how the UK has changed in the last 30 years, without anyone voting on it, no one said, let's transform the country demographically, yet it's happened. Again, people are rightly going, well, this isn't the country that it used to be. Quite literally, it isn't the country that we used to be. And it's one thing if people coming in were going to buy in to, the ideas of the UK and how that's functioning. But they're seeing increasingly, are they not, that there are certain communities where there are extreme vestiges within them who are trying to change the country to match what they're doing. And we've seen examples of that time and time again. So there's a sense of things are just out of control. The borders not being managed, of course, with illegal migration coming in and legal migration also, sort of out of control. People just have had enough. They've had enough. They want solutions. They want to turn the corner on this, to turn back to a time when Britain was respected, was valued, and did have a future that it could be proud of. And I think we can get there again, but it does require dealing with these issues with some pretty radical solutions.
What would foreign policy look like under a Nigel Farage-led government in the UK? Of course, with you playing a significant role, what values, policies would underpin that?
Well, if we look at British foreign policy and where we might be going, firstly, look, I'm an advisor at the end of the day. I advise and others decide. That's the sort of starting point. But my positions have been quite clear over 20 years, and they are that Britain and the US are the cornerstones of global security. They've been that way for 80 years, and we start from the principles that the special relationship is an important, functioning, living partnership. And we build out from there into NATO, of course, into our commitments to our allies in various places, and to, of course, looking at the threats to freedom, if you like, around the world. Look, we are the free world at the end of the day. Whatever one thinks about our politics, they are grounded in freedom. They are grounded in the ideals that made the West. And we have many people trying to chip away at that internationally. So I would be hoping that we would be, strong part of that global coalition of the free world, looking at ensuring that the unfree world is not going to push back on our space. Russia is a threat, China is a threat, Iran continues to be a threat, defanged perhaps slightly, but it's still there. There are others, of course, North Korea, and many more who would seek to curtail that freedom. So I think freedom is the essential building block of what the West has always been about. And that's true in the UK, it's true in the US. And, this doesn't mean that you willy-nilly throw yourselves into foreign conflicts. This is not what this is about. But it's about ensuring that we have a security environment that reflects the proliferation of threats against us, and that we can defend our nation against those threats and our alliances against those threats. Because, we are certainly better together than we are apart, particularly with the Americans. And I want to, make it quite clear that whatever is happening in the US, you've got to look at the US very carefully to understand that the changes are often misunderstood. There's no sense of the Americans resiling from the world. The Trump administration has been isolationist. It's been quite active. It's active in a different way, but that's because the world's changed. And I think we all have to wake up to the fact the world is a very different place to what it was 10, 20 years ago, and be reflective of that while maintaining those core principles that have always been at the heart of what the West is about.
There's a difference, significantly so, between working together with an ally like the US, and that is your most valuable, most important relationship, clearly, and not seeing eye to eye, or still having enough courage to disagree when it matters. And I look at Russia, Ukraine at the moment, and I look at the peace deal that has been tabled or has been leaked, however you see it. And as someone who has covered this conflict, as someone who is banned in Russia because of my views regarding Vladimir Putin, who I consider to be an absolute warlord, evil in many ways. But the US is taking a different approach, and it may yet be the only effective one, and we'll wait and see how that comes out. How confident are you that you can work hand in hand? Because I know that Farage is, initially there was a little bit of conjecture regarding his views about Russia. He's now made it very clear where he stands in this conflict. How do you balance all of that? It feels overwhelming to me now. How do you manage those relationships at the top level when you're in power while still staying true to who you are and what you value?
let's just go a quick sidebar on Nigel Farage. I think, again, people have thrown their own views onto him as to what they think he believes. I can assure you he is solid on being anti-Putin, absolutely solid. People have taken predictions he made years ago as having been his views. They're not. They were predictions. Now, his views are quite clear.
And that's a very different thing. Very, very,
very different thing. He may have predicted something, but that is not the same as endorsing it, supporting it, or anything of that kind. He's made it quite clear he stands with Ukraine and that Putin is a very bad man, and that if Putin, sort of tries anything on NATO, we should be shooting down his planes. He, again agreed that the plan that was leaked was not the right plan for Ukraine. And, you're going to get a very solid defense of, the free world from Nigel Farage. That's for sure. And when we come to looking at how do you deal with people you might not always see eye to eye on, well, the first thing is not to go in with all guns blazing, not going in saying, you're evil, you're wrong, here's a mistake, etc. I think, what the Americans like doing these days is float trial balloons, basically. Right, let's see how we can move this forward. Trump is about moving things forward. He's trying to get to an end point here. Now, the route is going to be very windy, Erin. It's going to be it's not like in the old days where you would go, well, there's my objective, I'm going to straight down there. Trump prefers to weave this way and that way, this way and that way. And the trick to this is making sure that you're on side saying, look, in your weaving, we think, that might be a bit too far that way. Let's move you a bit more this way if we can and work with you to understand why you're going in that direction. There's a partnership approach to the Trump administration that I think, actually works wonders. You've actually seen it in the last week. The Ukrainians, to their immense credit, didn't go, here's a disastrous deal, we're not signing it. Yeah. They went, let's engage with the Americans, let's see where we can find a better solution, and suddenly the plan's looking a lot better because of the engagement process. So with here, it's a question of engaging. It's a question of saying, look, we get that you want to move this conflict to an endpoint. So do we. Let's try and work together on achieving that.
Do you think from the US's perspective, just from you're so experienced in government in the UK, do they look at the current UK administration and not take it seriously? I can't see how anyone could take Keir Starmer seriously, and that's not me being nasty, or I find him so weak in so many ways. Do you think the UK is now playing less of a role than it might be under a strong leader in these big global events that impact us all?
Well, the strange thing about this is that Keir Starmer does appear to have a fairly good relationship with Donald Trump.
But so does Anthony Albanese in Australia, because Trump was nice to Mamdani. Come on, we can't...
Well, the Mamdani thing, no, the Mamdani thing was very calculated. I think the Mamdani thing...
I think it all is.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this programme, but do you not think that Mamdani looked like his bitch by the side? Do you not think that's what happened? He was standing next to Trump. Trump's sitting there, the king. There's this guy who's holding his hands in front of him, looking really awkward. Trump's saying, you say what you want, basically, in this sort of way, I don't care. I think that was a calculated... No. Mamdani's come crawling on his knees to me. I'll see him because I'm the king. Let's make sure we know who exactly. Thank you very much.
But I think I made the exact same point, like almost his, little lapdogs around him when he made the peace deal announcement that Starmer did nothing to help progress, but was standing up there on stage, same as Macron, same as all of them. They all look like his little lackeys. So you're right, it's a similar thing.
In fact, in that case, it was even worse because they were actively working against what the Americans were trying to do.
They ensured that this could have happened on October 8.
Yeah, recognition of the Palestinian state was a disaster. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So look, I think he's got a good relationship with Keir Starmer, and I'll give Keir Starmer credit for that, for maintaining that relationship. It's important, that the leader of the UK is able to, engage with the US. But if you look at what Labour has done in power, it has been to diminish British capabilities and British standing on the world stage. The Chagos Islands deal, for example, is totally inexplicable to anyone who's taken a look at it. Basically, the British decided that because of a preliminary judgment, not even a proper judgment, a preliminary judgment by an international court that had Russian and Chinese jurists on its bench, that we should not simply give back some islands to people who never owned them in the first place, i.e. Mauritius, they never owned them, but we'll pay them billions to do it as well. Utterly inexplicable, and I've not seen a greater example of, kind of throwing away your power than that, to actually pay someone else to take things away from you. Insanity. And of course, the Palestinian state issue. terrible diminishment of Britain's role. I mean, for us to have gone there and, kind of broken the sense of what a state is by just making a political decision. I mean, there is no Palestinian state. Let's be clear about that in the classical sense of what a state is. It doesn't control territory. It's not, no one knows what the government is. All those things that we know exist as component parts of a state, it doesn't. Yet we rushed ahead and did that. These are shameful decisions on the part of the British, and they can't but help diminish our standing, even if the relationship at the top end seems to be okay.
I want to ask you now about Tommy Robinson, if I can, and I don't know if you're comfortable answering. You can tell me to sod off if you're not.
But answer anything. It's fine.
Thank you. That's very rare. Thank you. I've had Tommy Robinson on the show.
Who tells you to stop off? That's just outrageous.
Well, I mean, I can tell by their looks sometimes.
Okay. So an eye sort of pop up with the eye.
It's a non-verbal sod off. Non-verbal.
I was going to say, I know the Australian politicians are a little more, kind of in there with their insults, but even that would be a bit much. But okay, let's assume it happened. Okay, fine. It's not happening today.
I'm a woman. I would never misinterpret a look from a man in a way that would just not be accurate.
No woman has ever done that in history, so you're absolutely right.
I'm completely safe. But I've had him on the show. I've had Nigel on the show. I can't help but feel that they would be so powerful together as a unit. And I feel like that may be impossible now, and it arced up again when Farage referenced Tommy in relation to accusations that he was racist, etc. Do you believe that a reconciliation would benefit the UK, given he has such a significant following that stands in a large way against a lot of the same things that you guys do?
Well, the problem is it's just not possible, Erin. Look, I haven't had a long study of his views, and I'm not going to get into a debate. He's a person you should speak to about that. And I think, as you say, you have done in that way. But I still don't think that he reflects where the British public are. I think he is extreme in my view. Again, he might be right on some things. But then, you can always point out to people being right about things, but being wrong in general. And that's just my view of him. And I don't think there can be a reconciliation based on that.
I asked Nigel about Elon Musk as well in terms of funding. Where are you guys looking? Do you need funding? Would that be a relationship worth trying to salvage?
Well, I think the relationship with Elon Musk should be something that ought to be aspired to anyway, because he's an interesting man with interesting ideas, and you should be open to all sorts of interesting ideas when it comes to looking at what might work for the country. So I think from the perspective of that, you should be speaking to Elon Musk if possible. But I should stress, you're not necessarily looking for funding from Elon Musk because, of course, he's an American. And that would be an odd thing for a British political party to be basing its financing on that. I think there are plenty of people in Britain who are very keen on supporting reform, who want to see the change that reform will bring to economics, to the sort of cultural life of the country, to looking at where we go from a justice perspective. There are enough British people who want to see change that the party will do very well from appealing to them without needing to look overseas, even if there was a legal way to receive their money, which I'm not sure there is. So forget the funding route. But I think from an ideas perspective, Elon Musk is always interesting.
Nick Candy, purse stringing. I don't know a lot about him other than he was married to Holly Valance from Neighbours, etc., etc. He's obviously very, very wealthy, property investment. How is he finding this new political space in a more kind of structured way? And do you work quite closely with him?
So I can't comment on that because I've only met Nick once, briefly. I'm about to have another meeting with him, hopefully, which will be a bit longer. So you'll have to ask me that after I've met him. But look, certainly, if you notice today, for example, he had a great intervention in the papers on the subject of the Muslim Brotherhood, where he quite rightly pointed out the Muslim Brotherhood, of course, is a banned organization in many Arab countries. President Trump has started the process of banning the Brotherhood, bits of the Brotherhood in America as well. And guess what? There's only one political party in Britain who want to ban the Brotherhood, and that is Reform. So he is pointing out there, using his platform to say Reform will make this difference. And not only is it going to be important to Britain for that to happen, but to our potential allies in the Arab world as well, who will welcome the idea that a group they find and that we should find very disruptive will end up being banned as well. So I think, that gives an example of where Nick is he's already able to show his value added, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, what is for you personally? What do you aspire to? What is the end game for you? You're someone who's dedicated most of your life, if not all of it, to public service. Where do you want to be? Do you have aspirations to lead your nation at some stage?
No, I don't want to be prime minister. I've never wanted to be prime minister. I think that'd be a very bad choice for the country to make as well as me, were I to do it. No, look, for me, it's really simple. I would like to just see a government in place, which is going to, turn this country around quite significantly. I think we're so on the wrong track, Erin. And I want to, look for my children. I want them to have the same sort of experience growing up that I had, basically. Isn't that what we as parents always aspire to?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
want that to be the case. And if I can contribute to that in any way, even if it's as, simple as, seeding some good ideas, then that's what I want to do. And the reward will simply be that government coming into being and transforming the country. Because I think we need it, we deserve it, the British people certainly deserve it. And, I think that'll be a force for good, not simply at home, but also abroad as well.
how quickly can that happen, do you think? Can a government coming, well, we've seen how quickly the current government kind of capitulated. So maybe the opposite can be true as well. How much time would you guys need if you were to win the next election for people on the ground to just go, oh,
I like that. I like that. I like that. That's a good aspiration to have. Get them to make that noise. But on a serious note here, the
yeah,
thing is, a British Prime Minister has got immense power. If a British Prime Minister can command a majority in the House of Commons, they can literally turn the country 180 degrees around. That's what can happen because you've
yeah,
got the ability to do that. There are very few checks and balances in our system. If you have a manifesto, you get in, you have a majority, then you've got every right to put it into process and to put it into play.
yeah,
And the key to it is you have to have, look at the successful governments of the past. Two most successful governments of the last 50 years in the UK, Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair. We'd have to agree with
yeah,
them, but just looking at what they did.
yeah,
So both cases, they had an animating intellectual idea behind them. So Thatcherism, and Blair had the third way. And they then had a cascade of policies they were ready to put into process because they knew what they wanted to do straight away. The timing bit is everything. So you need to have that animating spirit, which I think reform has in terms of where it wants to take the country. You might want to call it Farageism, whatever it is, it's there and
yeah,
it's quite obvious as to what it's going to be. And secondly, the policies. Now that is being worked up right now. Zia Yusuf is the policy chief of reform. He is a powerhouse when it comes to ideas. He's got other people like Danny Kruger helping him on that, and others like Richard Tice, many more coming on board who are going to bring those policies so that on day one, if there's a reform majority, it will be a very swift action, and we can get the electorate to indeed make that very pleasant sound of air exhaling because the pressure is finally off and they can look to build a future.
And I'm not, when I do that, and that's a very comforting answer, by the way, I mean, the bar is so low that it's not even like, my life is perfect. It's, I'm not going to get stabbed on a train today. What a great day that is. That's how low the bar is.
That's a low bar, but we want them to actually go, I'm not going to get
Yeah.
stabbed. I'm actually going to build the country. I can see what's
Love that.
happening. My kids are going to have a better life. I'm going to have a better life. My parents are going to have a better life. We're all going to have a better life because of it.
Yeah.
That's where we need to be, Erin, don't we? We need a bit of optimism, sunny
I love that.
optimism. Reform can bring it back.
Absolutely. Cautiously optimistic, as my beautiful late dad used to always say. Alan,
Wise
thank you
man.
so much. I think you'll be an incredible addition, and I can't wait to see what you and your group of merry men do next.
And women.
Thank you. And women.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously.
Obviously,
it's the
women.
same.
We need those interpretation of looks, if nothing else. But of course, merry men and women, we're there.
Thank you for calling me out on that. Thank you.
Always.
Take care. Really appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening, for watching, for consuming. We are so grateful to you. We'll be back Monday, 6 a.m. Another amazing week. And by the way, we have an outstanding guest this week. I can't tell you who. I mean, let me give you a hint. Like Donald Trump ultimate. And I'm not going to say this guy's like a one rung below him because that might be offensive to him. But let's face it, no one's on Donald Trump's level when it comes to guests that I'm chasing, except maybe Elon Musk. This guy is as close to those two as you can get when it comes to people I've wanted on this show. I'll tell you more soon. I just want to make sure it's completely locked in so I don't look silly if he somehow decides, yeah, not for me. which he won't. He wouldn't. He couldn't, would he? I mean, he wouldn't dare. I mean, this is such an amazing show. Where else would he go? Nowhere, ladies and gentlemen. The answer is nowhere. I love you all. I can't wait to tell you who it is. And then I can't wait to bring him to you. Yes, it's a him. And I can't wait to see you Monday, 6 a.m. for another massive week on the Erin Molan Show. I need to really, by the way, this is probably not going to be overly interesting for men. I need to bronze or fake tan my hands, like the backs of them. I talk with my hands so much, it drives my 7-year-old crazy. And because I'm always putting bronzer on because I'm so pale naturally and you just look so washed out on camera, and I don't want to tan for real because that's so bad for you. But when I use my hands, I look at them and I think, oh my gosh, they're white compared to the rest of me. And it doesn't look overly flattering. So do you know what? Next week, my promise to all of you is that I will bronze my hands. I'll see you then. This is a podcast of substance, by the way, but sometimes we defer into less serious topics. I'll see you next week. Bye.